and get started on the MEES.
Hi, thank you for sticking around for the end here for the MEES training. And I'm Karen, as Kim was saying, and the other two colleagues over here, Diane Buat and Julie Gurman, have both attended the MEES training along with me May 10th in Blue Springs. So we went to that training initially, the training of the trainers, and then we came back, and then there was a period of time before the documents came back to us in terms of what will be used and how that will be used. And there have been a lot of decisions that have had to be made. We have people in the audience like Sarah Tipton, who's been a part of the MEES work group. And so some of those things continue to evolve, but we have what is the MEES training for this field testing year, and that's what we're going to be sharing with you today. Some of you have used the MEES in the past and have a lot of experience with that. So your expertise and the types of questions you ask, we will field those questions at the end, but if there's something you feel at the time we're presenting it that it would be better answered then, just ask it. And we'll do our best to answer those questions and try to keep us on schedule so that we can get through everything and complete the training and get you out of here as well. Everyone got the folder that was passed around, okay? So I'm going to go over the information in that folder, but before I start, the PowerPoint that we're sharing is developed by DESE. This is on the DESE website, and all the materials we're sharing with you, for the most part, except for a cooperating teacher form, is on the DESE website. But this PowerPoint that we're sharing with you is a condensed version, because the version of that will have more videos for training, and within the time frame we have to present it, we needed to pare some of that down. So if you go to that website and look at that PowerPoint, you're going to see some additional slides on there. To talk briefly about the learning outcomes here, first of all, we know that the MEES is replacing the MOPTA as our Missouri performance assessment. So it's really a high-stakes assessment because our students are no longer doing the MOPTA, but this MEES and passing this MEES will be one of the requirements they'll have to have in order to be certified, to be recommended for certification. So that becomes very high stakes in that. It's also that during a low stakes year, so during this field testing year, there is only a score of 24 that is required in order for the students to be able to be recommended for certification. With the learning outcomes today, when you look at the DESE PowerPoint, you'll notice that it refers to program supervisors, which are you, which we call university supervisors, and the cooperating teachers are consistently called cooperating teachers in there. So you'll notice those distinctions. This university supervisor training will be followed by a cooperating teacher training, which will be held on August the 28th, Tuesday, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Library Center. So if any university supervisor wants to attend that with your cooperating teacher, you're welcome to do that. We know, and everyone has spoken about that earlier, what a critical role the university supervisor play in the growth of the teacher candidates. And during this training, the things we are going to work on or look at is to gain an understanding of how the MEES teacher candidate rubric is used to effectively score the teacher candidates, to understand the essential role and meaningful and descriptive feedback. And what DESE does not list on this PowerPoint, but is very much an important part of the training, is the inter-rater reliability. And so we will be watching some videos and working through some scoring and how that will do for consistency throughout our EPP, and which is done at other EPP, all EPPs across Missouri. We're also at the very end going to talk about the specific documentation and what is required for university supervisors to complete in relation to MEAS. And Travis talked a little bit earlier and shared an assessment and timeline chart. Those things still apply. All that we're talking about during this component is the MEAS aspect. So what are the MEAS requirements that have to be in there? If you'll look in your folder, on the left side there's the colored sheet of paper, and that's a sheet that is just a summary sheet for you to have and for you to access. That is not something that is on DESE's website, but if you'll look at the very top line, it has DESE's website where you can find all the materials that are included in here and others, such as the online training and other documents. Behind that colored form, there's also a lot of frequently asked questions, and so we went ahead and made copies of that so that you would have access to that, because those are a lot of the questions that keep coming back again and again. On the other side of there is the rubric, which we'll spend a majority of our time discussing. There's also a calibration exercise sheet, which we'll use when we're doing that. And then the last sheet is the progress form, and that's what cooperating teachers use, and it's in that, their packet, in the supervisor packet. So I'm going to start very briefly to talk about the high stakes during the low stakes year, which is in this colored handout. For the MEAS training, there are 9 standards and 9 scores. Those scores are scored by the university supervisor and the cooperating teachers. The range of those scores are going to be 0 to 4, and we'll talk a little bit. Diane's going to share more about that in relation to how to score and when to score, where students will fall. 3 is the targeted or skilled area. So that's what we're looking for students to be at the end of student teaching. That does not, however, mean they can't score a 3 when you evaluate them at midterm if that's where they score. That's just saying that's the target for the end of student teaching. I mentioned that a 24 or greater is the score that's needed. A minimum of 24 has to be in order for it to be a pass this year in terms of being able to be recommended for certification. That score of 24 is going to be the university supervisor's summative score added with the cooperating teacher's summative score. That will be the score that will end up being submitted to DESE by MSU. The university supervisor and the cooperating teacher will document that in task stream when they do the rubrics, and then MSU will be responsible to send that information to DESE. It's low stakes because this year is a field testing year, but then they will be going back, and the committee that's been working on this will be meeting. They will be getting feedback from universities and EPPs and be moving forward with how that will be set moving forward. Okay, and then I already mentioned the inter-rater reliability. There are multiple roles that university supervisors and cooperating teachers have. These are just some of them. Mentoring teacher candidates to promote student growth, moving them from the student to the professional to build strong relationships, planning for quality instruction, and actionable feedback performance. And giving feedback is really a key factor. This slide just mentions a few of the skills and expertise that you already have and your cooperating teachers have, and you'll be serving as models and mentors for the students to develop those skill sets. Those are components of the MEAS and within the MEAS rubric, so that will be a tool that will be used as a resource to help move the students forward. And at this point, I think Diane will come up.
Okay, first of all, big cheer because Mo PTA is dead. Let's hear it. Yes, I mean, was that the most god-awful thing we've had to endure? But it's gone, okay? So it doesn't really matter what we give you today, you know it's better. It has to be. So even though it's a new system for us to learn and understand, know that it's all based on practice. It's not how well can you do these tasks and then send them to New York City, but how well can you perform in your classroom? And that's where we want students to spend their energy anyway. So it kind of works in concert with what we want to accomplish. So that's the good news. The Mies, oh, I'm supposed to click even. Okay. Whoops, too far. There are 9 standards, and these are a condensed version of the Missouri evaluation system that is used for all classroom teachers. We are zoning in on 9 of the total standards to work with our student teachers on. So again, these are going to be on your rubric. If you'll pull your rubric handout, Mies Teacher Candidate Assessment rubric, across each of your pages at the top is the standard. So you have 9 pages there. Each page represents one of the 9 standards. So let's take a look at what some of those standards are. Content knowledge. How well, how accurate is the information that our student teachers give to students in the classroom? Is it accurate? Is it relevant? Is it meaningful? Does it keep children engaged? Standard 1. Standard 2, we're looking at student growth and development. Is that happening over time in the classroom? 3, implementing the curriculum that aligns itself to state standards, to district standards, that the work they're doing, that the work our student teachers are doing links to expectations for that particular classroom. 4, critical thinking. Are student teachers asking higher level questions of students? Are we asking them to go above and beyond just repeating what is said to them? Are we asking them to synthesize and apply information? Positive classroom environment, behavior management, relationships with children. I mean, we all know how valuable that skill set is. So that's one of the areas that we're going to evaluate as well. Effective communication, written, verbal, electronic. All of those aspects is accurately using communication, talking at a pace that is easy for students to follow, using vocabulary appropriate for the age group that they're teaching. So all of those aspects of communication, verbal and nonverbal both. Student assessment and data analysis. Are our student teachers using information collected from students to help them design future lessons, to evaluate the success of the lesson that they've already taught? So using that assessment to become better teachers. Self-assessment and improvement. Are our students engaged in professional development? Are they researching new and different ideas to use in the classroom? Are we seeing that kind of personal and professional growth happen throughout the semester? And professional collaboration. Working well, playing with friends, working well as part of the group. So we're gonna look at all of those. And like we alluded to, we're gonna talk somewhat more deeply about some of those as we look at videos here. This is the overall chart, but we're zoning in on the green across the top. Those are our 9 standards to be evaluated. I think this is you, Julie. Julie's going to talk more about how do we score.
We're a well-oiled machine here. This is our first effort at tag team. So in your rubrics, you'll see that there are some descriptors under each of the 4 scoring guidelines. Whoops. And we're just going to take a few minutes because I think in the past we haven't had as many scoring options as there are this year. We're going to talk in a few minutes about more of what those things look like when we see our videos coming up. But this one is a new one, the zero score. So as we look at that, you see there's a standard there that the teacher candidate does not possess the necessary knowledge, so the standard is not evident or incorrect in their performance. So what does that mean? It means that when you're watching a student, they're giving a lesson presentation and they either don't know the material well enough to give it to the students accurately, or they're just not prepared. A score of 1 would indicate that they can articulate the necessary knowledge, but it's not being demonstrated in their performance. What's that mean? When you sit down and talk to them, they understand what they should be doing, but when they actually take the step in front of the students to present the material, there's still not a strong demonstration that they're able to present that material appropriately. Developing is the name listed for a score of 2. They are able to articulate the knowledge and demonstrate with some success. So that means, you know, you may be seeing on one visit that they've done some things really well, but there's still a few other areas that they have not communicated appropriately, or they've not given 100% accurate information. But at least there's more of the accurate than not. It also mentions high levels of effectiveness. So are they just standing up and reading out of a book and the students are not engaged, they're not following along, they're disengaged with the lesson, or hopefully not. As Karen mentioned earlier, our target is to try to get our students to a level 3 or a score of 3 by the time they finish their student teaching experience. So this is one that we want to pay particular attention to. They can talk the talk and they can walk the walk. They're able to give you feedback on their knowledge, and they can demonstrate it in the classroom. And I draw your attention to this last bullet there. We don't expect at the first visit that they're going to get a 3. The idea is through that feedback that Karen mentioned, we're going to try to help them grow from wherever they start to this level before their student teaching experience is finished. And then we all know that we're going to run across some superstars. And so there is a category for exceeding for a score of 4. They can adapt lessons on the fly. They can make changes as they need to based on student engagement or lack of. So we know that, you know, we want to make sure that we can recognize those students who are demonstrating some of the same characteristics that we might expect to see from their cooperating teacher if they were the one doing the lesson. And again, I'd ask you to point your attention to this last bullet. The teacher candidate must demonstrate all of the descriptors at a skilled candidate level, level 3, or a score of 3, as well as at least one of the descriptors in level 4 in order to earn that score. Diane, your turn.
Okay, you got that? Anywhere from a 0 to a 4 on each of the 9 standards. Oh, thanks. So that kind of, let's do the math here for a minute. There are 9 standards. The target is to reach a score on a 3 of each of those. So 9 times 3, what do you think? 27 from the cooperating teacher. 9 times 3, 27 from the university supervisor equals 54. 54 would be the, wow, that's a really great student teacher, right? We'd all agree with that. But the cutoff is going to be at 24. So you see why that should lower the anxiety. It's reasonable, it's doable. This is a year to collect information and to make adjustments moving forward. So student teachers need to get at least 24 points or a score of 24 out of a possible 54. So that should help relieve high anxiety. Even though there is a lot at stake in performing well, because certification is hanging on the line, but still it's at a level that should be achievable. So let's take a minute and dig a little deeper into Standard 1. We're going to review that because that's one of the standards we're going to look for further information as we watch the video. So pull out your rubric again, and we're going to be on the top page. Okay, refreshing your memory, Standard 1 is content knowledge is aligned with appropriate instruction. Let's look at the skilled column, the number 3 column. Actually, the 4th column over, but it's a score of 3. Let's look at some of the behaviors that we would expect for an end of the semester student. One of the first bullets is provide students with regular opportunity to process content through discussion with others. So that's going to look like a lot of cooperative learning structures happening in the classroom. The second bullet uses accurate content knowledge, relevant examples. So the teacher's going to provide examples, she's going to do some modeling, and she's also going to have some specific resources available to keep students engaged in the learning. So the teacher's going to use examples, she's going to do some modeling, she might use some anchor charts, she might use a number line. Sorry, I'm coming from the lower age level here, but those are my examples. Those of you who are secondary are going to be thinking of other things like resource books or using online searches, some of those resources for older children. The third bullet uses a variety of strategies to teach academic content and uses the vocabulary and terminology that will enhance that understanding. So academic language is at play here, and we're looking for common terms used repeatedly. So that we have this common language that we're using when we discuss whatever the content area is. The last bullet, here's the big one. This is what the others are about. The majority of students are engaged. They're raising their hands, they're asking questions, they're participating, they're adding content to the discussion, they're completing their follow-up work. So we're seeing all of those examples of how children are tuned in to what the lesson is about. So if we go either direction from this number 3 column, number 2 is always going to be, hey, just doing that at a little lower level. And number 4 is going to be, oh my goodness, doing those same things at a more awesome level. So I think, for me anyway, it's been helpful to zone in on level 3, where are we working toward, and then we might be scoring at a lower level prior to that, but again, that's going to be the outcome. That's the goal. Okay? Flip ahead a couple of pages and go to Standard 5. That's another standard we're going to take a look at. We're going to look a little bit at on the video. No. Oh. Never mind. Is that the only, I'm only going to do one? Okay, I'm going to do 5 also. So again, I'm going to zone in on Standard 5, look at column, skilled scored, number 3. This is all about environment. Understanding individuals within my classroom and understanding what motivates children within my classroom, creating a learning environment that's inviting, that encourages active engagement, that encourages positive social interaction, and helps children become self-motivated. So it's a pleasant place to be. You know what that looks like, right? You've helped develop that along the way. So let's look at the column for a score of 3. Monitors student behavior and intervenes as needed. So this is the student teacher who's scanning the classroom, who moves around a lot, who's paying attention to what are children doing. This student teacher also uses management strategies that helps to minimize distractions so that all children can stay engaged and on task. This student teacher is probably using some nonverbal signals, so again, she doesn't have to shut down everybody's learning to get the attention of students who need to be drawn back in. She regains attention in a non-distractive way. She plans and communicates appropriate expectations. So this is the student teacher who brings, okay, again, sorry about this young age group example, but she brings kids to the carpet for circle time and really talks about what kind of behavior she's going to expect during this segment of the day. Okay, remember now, everybody's going to sit crisscross, everybody's going to have their hands to themselves, everybody brought their pencil. I mean, she starts the lesson with this rundown, once again, of what's expected. So there are no surprises. We've just talked about how I expect you to behave, versus always just reacting to behavior and not talking about the positive expectation of what paying attention might look like. This student teacher also breaks lessons into manageable learning chunks. It's like, I know developmentally that this group of children is only going to be able to attend for 12 minutes. So I'm going to break my learning into 12-minute chunks. So planning again for that to happen. This student teacher, then I'm down on the next bullet, develops a strong personal relationship with every child in the classroom. Even the stinky ones, even the tricky ones, even the out-of-bounds one. They all have something special about them, and I'm going to discover what that is and react to it. So we are going to know, you're going to see that in your observations, and you're going to talk to your student teachers about that as well. I noticed that you always call on this kid and you never call on that kid. What's that about? Bringing that to a conscious level of, oh, I might be slighting certain children in the classroom unconsciously. So helping them see what a difference that can make. They're always teaching all children with respect and caring. And that's going to show. You can't fake that. It's either there or it's not. So we're going to help them develop that as well. And the student teacher is also expected to follow the expectations for their school, their district, whatever the behavior expectations are, whatever the format of monitoring that might be. And that varies a lot from school to school. But there's attention given to that and a conscious effort to be part of the team policy. Okay, now, Julie, get us ready to dig into the video.
All right, thank you. We're going to just talk briefly before we get into the videos a little bit more about the scoring and scoring protocols. One of the things that is going to become even more imperative this year as opposed to years past is the consistency of how you view things compared with the cooperating teacher. We call that inter-rater reliability. We also know that it's going to be important for you folks to be as consistent as possible from department to department, from supervisor to supervisor, because you know it's possible that there may be situations where student teachers within a district will get together and one has a university supervisor A and one has supervisor B, and they get to talk and shop, and pretty soon, well, I didn't do any of that and I still got this score, and the other teacher says, oh, well, I did this and this and I didn't get scored as high as you did. So we need to be very careful about trying to be consistent. So when you're determining the score, and as Diane went through and we talked about Standard 1 and Standard 5, we're going to look at both of those with a couple of different videos here in just a moment. What you're looking for is what criteria they meet the most of in a scoring column. So if they're almost all, they've hit all of the criteria or almost all of the criteria for 2, but there was maybe one thing that was a 1, what score would you give them? Don't everybody talk at once. You'd give them a 2. If it's a tie, we suggest that you score at the lower level because we want them to grow, right? So if there's hitting half of the criteria for one score and they've hit half on another score, we want to focus on how they can grow and be more consistent to earn that higher score. In the exceeding score, I've already mentioned this, I'll just briefly repeat it again. They need to be solid on all of the criteria for a score of 3. And then if they hit one or more of the 4 exceeds criteria, then they can be given that exceeding score. You know it's got to be what you see. It can't be a conversation between you and the cooperating teacher about, oh, this was a bad day, she normally does it this way. It's got to be what you see, and then you compare it to your score to what the cooperating teacher sees. There will be some yes? Not necessarily. I mean, you don't have to have the cooperating teacher in there, but the cooperating teacher will be doing scoring periodically on a weekly basis, I believe. And at some point, then you will, when you're ready to give that final score, you'll talk to them and talk about your score and their score. And hopefully they'll be fairly well aligned. Karen's going to talk towards the end of our time this afternoon about some optional tools and some different requirements for artifacts based on particular ed prep programs. Right now, DESE is still saying that artifacts are an optional issue for DESE, but that doesn't mean that your departments can't ask for specific artifacts, and that will be something that's looked upon from department to department and not through DESE's protocol. Again, the reason that we want there to be as much consistency as possible is it's only fair to the student. We want them to be able to understand what best practices look like, be able to model or begin to model best practices. And your coaching and the cooperating teachers' coaching of them is going to really be what makes them grow and become great representation of the ed prep programs here at Missouri State. So if you haven't already, if you'll pull out in your packet the two pages that were behind the rubric, that the calibration exercise scoring and feedback form, we're going to be watching two different videos, one elementary example and one high school example. We are going to be asking you to think about Standard 1 and Standard 5 for both videos. As you get ready to view the video, just take a glance at some of those things on the scoring form. And then what we're going to do is we're going to show you this video for a few minutes. The first one's about 7 minutes long. We may not watch the whole thing, but long enough for you to be able to get a sense of what kind of a score you would award the person in the video. And then after we, yes, ma'am. Right. The expectation is that they get a score on all 9 between the start and the finish of their student teaching experience, but it's certainly up to you and to them through whatever communication you're going to use. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, will the students know ahead of time which standards you're going to be watching for, and will you be looking for all 9 every time you're in the classroom? The answer, I think, help me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're suggesting is that you communicate with them ahead of time. Which things should I be expected to be able to see in this lesson? And then as the time goes on, if there's an area where they didn't score well on, they need an opportunity to demonstrate a second or third time, you can work with them on that. By the end of the semester, you will want to be able to give them a score on all 9. So you'll just need to keep in touch with them and work out a system to where you can observe the things that you haven't necessarily been able to observe.
And I think, though, sometimes you don't always have to tell the teacher candidate what things you're watching for. You know, I think the point is that you're going to look at all 9 standards, but you may be there and just be watching for, and because of this particular lesson, there are more opportunities for certain things, and that you're watching for those. So sometimes we'll be communicating with them to let them know, here's what you're targeting, here's what the feedback was I gave you the last time, here's what I will be coming to look for, and sometimes you may not.
Yes, I want to piggyback on that. Here's my thought process about that. By visit number 2, anyway, I think I'll be saying to a student, I haven't seen anything about assessment. We haven't talked about assessment. Next time, collect some things to show me what you're doing to gather information in the classroom, or let me see some of your running records from your reading groups, or whatever. But I'm going to put that out there that, you know, I've already been here, but I haven't seen any of this. Let's zone in on some of those things that are not happening just spontaneously. Here's the other thing I forgot to tell you earlier that is really, really important. When we were talking about the rubric and the different columns for the skill sets, the skill scores, those are not nice examples listed under each score. Those are must-sees. So in order for a score of 3 to be given, I must see this, I must see those bullets, a majority of those bullets. Now, they might be doing other great things within that standard, but in order to achieve that particular score, we're going to need to see those particular behaviors. So it's like, hey, I've not ever seen you use any cooperative learning. Why can't I say that? I've not seen any cooperative learning strategies, so I'm not marking that bullet. Hey, show me some of that. So again, those are must-sees. Those are listed here. And in the past, when we've used evaluations, those have been possible examples. Well, they changed gears on us now, and these now have become must-sees. Does that make sense? Okay. I think we're ready to go.
I think this is a little redundant, so we're not going to talk about this again. The one thing I would just want to mention briefly before we look at the video, if you watch this PowerPoint presentation on the DESE website, you'll see a lot more information about bias. It's difficult sometimes, especially for first-time university supervisors, to realize the skill level of our student teachers. So if you're a retired third grade teacher and you're in a third grade classroom watching a student teacher teach a third grade reading lesson and they're not doing it quite the way you would, try to put that aside and be open-minded about where they're at in their journey, and keep those those kinds of things on the back burner. And as Diane brought up a great point, those things on the rubric, they may not be your personal preference of things that you think a skilled teacher should demonstrate, but those are again, to be consistent and have a high degree of reliability in our scores, we have to focus first and foremost on those things. So the first video that you're going to see is an elementary math lesson, and I'm not going to say any more about it than that, other than to say, get your forms out and get ready.
Thank you. Remember, twice as likely on blue. So, that's all you need. Simple, 2 blue, 1 red. Let's make a prediction, guys. Can anybody make a prediction of what our outcome might be when we spin the spinner this time? Enough? What do you mean blue? Let's use full sentences. Does anybody agree with enough? Anybody want to take it a step further? How many more times do you think we might land on blue than we land on red? Twice as likely. So say I'm spinning the spinner 2 times. Let's try 10 times. How many times would you expect to land on blue and land on red? 9 out of 10? That's a lot. Well, you know what, guys? Let's get to it. Let's give it a try and see. Because today we're only spinning it 4 times. Look at part A. Spin the paper clip 4 times. Record the number of times it lands on blue and on red. So I'd like you to get with your partners. Take your paper clip. Here, why don't you, and Justin, take a seat in the back, I'll give you a sheet, and you can catch up. Maybe Jess and Jordan can kind of